Good morning, everyone. Lovely to see you, and thank you for joining us for another Boomerang Labs Accelerator. This month, we're really excited to have Elizabeth Kaelin here, commercialisation specialist, who will give her own intro a little bit further on. But we come together every month to bring a different topic to your online screens, specifically addressing issues and challenges and areas of interest for circular economy startups, as we're suggesting today with how commercialization looks different for circular startups. But it is a bit more.
But I did tell you, if you're gonna go down the artist route, you have to make stuff. You have to continue making stuff.
That's very good timing for me to send out the obligatory reminder to stay on mute if we're on the call today. Thank you. And I've lost my train of thought, but yes, we have these monthly, very interesting topic that goes beyond circular economy today, to also just purpose-driven and sustainable startups as well. So firstly, I'd like to acknowledge the traditional custodians on the various lands on which we all work and live today. I'm from the Hunter Valley, so across different areas of the Wabakal and Wanneroo people, especially recognising that this week is NAIDOC week with the theme of For Our Elders. So we do extend our respects to elders past, present and emerging. A quick intro to Boomerang Labs. We're Australia's first circular economy accelerator, meaning that we're supporting that transition from the linear economy or business as usual, specifically working with entrepreneurs and small businesses to change the way business does business, to regenerate natural systems, to design out waste and keep products and materials in use. We provide support for startups at all stages of growth, particularly that ideation phase, early stage and late stage. But today is part of our events work that we do to build a bit of community in this space and create learning for what is often an isolating journey of being a founder. Wanted to let you know that, as I said, we do these webinars monthly, so save the date for next month. We're teaming up with the Fight Food Waste CRC to talk about what these research orgs can do to help startups. We'll have some time specifically to network with food waste fighting founders, tongue twister, startups that are actually addressing that waste stream and talking about how they can get involved with Fight Food Waste. But that'll be 3rd of August, and we will open up registrations at the end of this webinar, so you can register straight away. Elizabeth, I'll hand to you, unless Piers, did you want to say anything too? Piers Grove, our co-founder, is online today as well.
No, thank you. It's fabulous to have Elizabeth here, because it's very rare that you get somebody so versed in the government and the support that's available from AusIndustry, but with her own entrepreneurial background. So with that, perhaps Elizabeth could fill out a little bit of that history.
Sure. Good morning, everyone. My name is Elizabeth Kaelin. I am a commercialization specialist. And what does that actually mean? So I will start with a bit of my background. So I started my career probably feeling very similar to many of you. I really wanted to change the world and make a big impact. But the way that I believed that I would do that was actually through nutrition and dietetics. So I became a clinician early on in my career, and I really always loved food, was really passionate, and thought that I would actually end up working in some kind of organization like a think tank or a charity, educating the masses, I guess, about good food and nutrition. So I keenly understand the desire and motivation for social enterprise to want to make the world a better place. So I ended up working in various companies, but found myself in Australia almost 11 years ago. I don't know if you can tell from my accent, but I'm not originally from Australia. And thought, what kind of product can I sell? How can I, make an impact? And I started a company called Maitre D. We were the maitre d' of catering online. And when I started, I was very bright-eyed, bushy-tailed. I all I knew about business was from working in, larger corporations, doing nutrition sales, to clinicians, which is a very different sell when you want to be a big commercially minded enterprise. So I learned very quickly and on the job pretty much most of what I will teach you or what I will talk about today. So I built that business and crawled through glass for 6 years, bootstrapping in order to sell it. So I've been through the journey of starting something from scratch all the way up to acquisition. And that was, I think, oh my gosh, what are we, 2023? So like 6 years ago now? Oh my gosh, it's so long. Almost as long as I had my business. And since then, I have worked in various roles in innovation and professional mentoring and advising. So I have seen thousands of companies. I have lectured at UTS, Masters of Applied Finance students in entrepreneurial finance. And most recently was, along with my former colleague, Jonathan, a commercialization facilitator for the Accelerating Commercialisation Grant Program that was run by AusIndustry, RIP. And I will talk about that a little bit later in the presentation, because I know that, grant funding is something that's probably of interest to a lot of you. But I thought what I would do first is introduce myself first and foremost, so that you understand, where I'm coming from. I have a very direct style. So if you have any questions, I will give you the most direct and incisive feedback I can. We open it for Q&A. I want to hear about all of your companies. When I talk to founders, I assume your business is world-class. I assume that it's going to change the world, but I really don't care, because that's not my job as a commercialization specialist. Yeah, I want to know who's going to buy it, how much they're going to buy it for, and how often they're going to buy it, what market you operate in, and preferably if there is a market that is outside your current target market, in order to apply that technology and that idea so that you can make more money. Because the only thing that matters in business is making money and making enough to survive. So one of the questions that I would normally ask my students is, what is the job of a company? And I would get lots of feedback back, like, it's to add loads of value, it's to serve the customer, which is absolutely not what it's.
You didn't want to sit in the sun?
It is not.
You didn't want to sit?
Yes.
Okay, I'd want to sit in the sun.
So yeah, so all of those things are technically true, but the number one goal of your company is to survive. And the way that you do that is through commercialization, to ensure that you have enough capital in your business to enable you to actually achieve the vision that you want to, which is, hopefully to make your mark on the world, and to in commercialization of circular economy in particular, to take what we already have and to continue to use that to, the best of society's ability, so that we don't need to keep making more stuff, can actually keep what we've got here. So the first thing I wanted to touch on was the question of how commercialization is different for circular startups. So the first thing I would say is that it's not different. Commercialization remains the same for every single commercial entity that, exists in the world. Who buys it? How often do they buy it? How much they buy it for? And what market they operate in? And is there another market that you can apply your idea to? The difference with circular economy is that the biggest difference, in my humble opinion, is that you have to work with existing supply chains, existing models, existing systems that will affect the way that you can do business. So rather than build something from scratch, let's just say it's a B2B SaaS program, and you are trying to get into an enterprise in order to improve HR outcomes, whatever that might be. It's different with circular economy, because generally you have a physical product, or you are dealing with a platform that might be facilitating buying, selling, recycling of physical products. So that is a big difference. You will have different costs, and you will have different ways in which you need to work with others in order to achieve your vision. Another difference, I would say, which is kind of the same again in other businesses, but it probably affects you more, is that there's loads of goodwill, hopefully, in the area that you're working in, and there's not lots of money. Yeah. So it could be that the customers you serve, they might be limited in their own funds. Hopefully they aren't. That would be the ideal in any kind of company. But that could be the case. So there are some subtle differences. I would say the biggest is working within those existing supply chains, established systems and modalities, and then adapting within. So I just wanted to pause and see if anyone has any questions, if you want to post them in the chat. Katie, if you wouldn't mind sort of like manning chat. Oh, and I forgot to say, I am speaking today from Gadigal land. So I am in Sydney in the inner west, and I pay my respects to elders past, present, and emerging. So what I'd like to do is I have a list of questions that you submitted before the presentation, and I'd like to go through those and answer them. And then after we do that, I will open it up to the floor for questions, because I'd really like to get to all of you and hear about your questions with regards to circular economy in particular. If you have anything about your specific product and you go over sort of like 2 or 3 minutes, that's something that we could potentially take offline. Okay. So the first question, we have been in this space 15 years, yet I still come across the mindset in the community. If it is something to do with refurbishing or recycling, it has to be a nonprofit organization. How do normal for-profit businesses like us build credibility? I'm sure this is hopefully something that will help all of you. Being commercially minded first. So I often have companies come to me who are social enterprise, who have lots of ideas. They have built a really great product, and they don't have a revenue model. Yeah, or they don't know how they're going to make money, or they haven't really worked out, who's necessarily going to buy it. They know there's a need, but they haven't really worked out how they're going to monetize it or make money. And what I say to them is, if there is, and they're saying, there's nothing like it in market. If there isn't something like it in market, there's probably a couple of reasons why. The first is that it doesn't make any money, or it doesn't make enough money in order to sustain a business operation. So paying yourself first and foremost, paying staff, having, you'll have lots of overheads. So it might not be commercially viable. It might be needed, but it might not be a commercially viable business. And if that is the case, then you are a charity, or you are a nonprofit, which, by the way, is completely fine. If that is actually something that you want to do, but it's a different model. Yeah, what I am here to teach you is how to create a commercially viable business. So that way you kind of have control, hopefully, if it is a commercially viable entity, so that you don't have to rely on things like grants, which, as we know, can be finicky and unreliable at any time. So I want to teach you to be self-sustaining. If you are commercially minded and you understand your model, you understand all of the players. Let's just say, for example, you are a refurbished chair company, right? Do you know everyone who's using chairs? Has there been any change in the market because of, everyone working from home? Are you focused on office chairs? Are you focused on antiques? Who are the different players? Do you have to play nice with antique stores? Do you have to play nice with HR or procurement? So, and understanding not only what their motivations are, but do they have any budget? Is it something that they will pay for? People will love to tell you all about how great your idea is, but then when it comes to signing that check, it could be very different. So I think in terms of building credibility, just being really confident in your model and knowing that there is value there, and that if this particular customer doesn't pay for it, that someone else will. And that will build credibility, not only with your customers, but any stakeholders you have and any potential investors that you might be looking at in order to provide your business with additional capital. The second question is, transitioning to a circular economy involves challenging established systems, but total addressable markets tend to be biggest in solutions that fit existing systems. How do we make compelling monetary propositions as a circular startup? You fit into existing supply chains. That is what you do. And the reason you do that is because it is the absolute fastest path to adoption. If you make it easy, if you can take what people already have and say, look, you're already doing this. You don't have to integrate, a new piece of software into your entire system and your organization, which might be running on Windows Explorer 7 or something. Like some of these people might be like quite old school. Maybe they are a bit more tech savvy, but I believe that your job is not to challenge the status quo. You can do that as a founder here in a safe space. When it comes to the external world, you are all about service. And part of that is integrating into their existing supply chain as seamlessly as you can, because that is actually true disruption. No one wants to be disrupted in business. If you are coming into a business that is 30 years old, they're going to be clinging on to dear life to survive. Yeah, because they probably know it's coming, whether it's unconscious or not, but they're going to be clinging on. So what you can do, your job really should be to make them comfortable in adopting a new way or an additional way that as seamlessly as possible can integrate into their systems or make them a lot more money, because that is also compelling. And can you do that in such a way that it is as cost effective as possible for them to adopt your model, and then convince them that down the track, there might be a bit of a capital outlay, is my assumption, but then down the track that they will be so much better off. And if you can provide some kind of either proof point or in terms of a case study or some other company that they can potentially be looking at, or if you can show some demonstrable benefits straight away, even if it's small, that might give them the confidence and courage to be able to go ahead with your business. And by the way, a lot of them, my assumption would be that, they don't really want to work with startups because it's a risk. Yeah, part of what the AC grant was for is that, these early stage companies are commercially risky for investors, for even, companies to sometimes use, because what if you don't work? What if it falls over? Yeah. So trying to de-risk it from their perspective of where they're coming from with established systems over decades, that's going to go a long way. You're intrigued by the title and keen to learn more about how I commercialize your new social enterprise-based ideas. I think I've covered off on a lot of that. What are the early funding opportunities available to circular economy startups? Okay, so the first would be customers. And I think, I'm not sure why a lot of you are here in terms of like, if you're looking for investment, if you want to grow like a tech startup or like a big startup. I think in the innovation space, we actually sometimes forget about the fundamentals, which is just having a sustainable business model from the beginning. If you are fortunate enough to be able to invest your own capital initially, whether or not that's your time, whether or not that's a bit of money, it's also going to be your energy. If you can demonstrate value and get money from customers so that you can be self-sustaining, that's exactly what I did. I thought I was going to be this big tech startup. I built this ridiculously complicated food ordering platform that I had to hire 10 customer service representatives to use while answering the phone to put orders through my own platform for customers. I could have had a Shopify website. But instead, I went down this whole path where I needed to have this like whole big system. And really, I could have, if I wanted, run my company at the time with an Excel spreadsheet. And by the way, Excel spreadsheets are a lot more versatile and easy to adapt than huge custom built platforms. Yeah. So you can get money from customers. I also think crowdfunding is a pretty like reasonable and viable way for startups. At least if you have some kind of physical product, I would absolutely look at that first, because again, you're making money straight away. You're getting either money for advanced orders, or you're getting money just to deploy your product. It also gives a lot of social proof to any distributors that you might be looking with, any existing supply chain partners, any potential investors, so that you can demonstrate that there's value, commercial value there. I think a lot of investors, and I know Piers is an impact investor, but I think like at the end of the day, we were talking about models. A VC model or an investment model is to get a return on investment. So no matter how much they like you as a founder and they are really passionate about personally about your wanting to change the world, at the end of the day, the only businesses they will invest in are those that are commercially viable first, and those that have a huge economic and financial potential so that they can make more money, because their model is to raise money from other investors and make those investors more money. So if that doesn't happen, they go out of business. Yeah. So early funding opportunities, I would say customers and a crowdfunding campaign would be good. Potentially get seed funding from what we would call friends, family, fools round. So, you know, get some capital upfront from, you know, anyone who's in your network who believes in what you're doing, and just start to demonstrate that value. So that's what I would say, because we will touch on grants at the end. How do we define a circular startup? I think I might let Piers do that during our Q&A just before. I have my own ideas, but I'd like to hear from Piers. He is the founder of Boomerang Labs, so I think he's probably more, he can answer that question. The last, so how local council can encourage and support local businesses transitioning or to starting up circular business. Grant funding is my answer to that. So for those of you who are interested in grant funding, one of the options I have encouraged them to look at first is actually their local council. There's a lot of little councils that are out there that might have, I don't know, 5 grand, 10 grand, like 25 grand even, in order to fund, you know, smaller projects that will help, you know, the actual, like, you know, micro economies that exist in your area. So I think local councils can either use your product or your service and pay for it. Absolutely. Pay for it first and foremost. You are not a charity. Yeah, you are a commercially viable enterprise. Even if it is like as cheap as it comes, you know, if you are running what we would call a pilot, so you're just like kind of trying it out, I would feel that out. Hopefully some of you might have a bit of commercial experience before, so that you can kind of understand what the return on investment might be if you give it away. If you are not necessarily versed in business, I highly encourage you not to give anything away for free, not even to your local council, unless there is significant social proof that you believe is going to help you in future. Because if you start to give it away, you don't know whether or not anyone will pay for it. So local councils can encourage and stimulate local economies by offering small grants to circular economy startups, and also to become customers of those startups. So that's all the questions that we have. Piers, if you want to take over from here, and then I'm happy to answer any questions.
That'd be great. Thank you so much. I think the first question we've got, which I think is very kind of common in the circular and purpose-driven businesses, that you know, you've spoken a lot about being quite focused on commerciality, and that's in a way what Amy's saying has got us into this pickle in the first place, is people determined to make a buck over all else. Is there a way to change that narrative so it's not all about money? And yes, does it have to distort purpose, I guess, reading between the lines?
So look, so one of the things that first I will say, Piers, that's not my job.
Yeah.
And the only reason I do that is because I play devil's advocate. You know, like I try to instill in founders the harsh reality, essentially, of, you know, of what it is like to try to grow a high growth venture. Yeah. But I will also say that there are several ways that for purpose entities can sort of bake that into their model. Yeah. So the first would be, you know, that you set certain standards of service or of suppliers that you use, you know, like you have to decide as a founder, because it's your business, right? So I would say to founders that you have this amazing vision that you want to change the world. Your business is a vehicle to do that. But what gets you out of bed every morning probably isn't why your business exists. Yeah, so I'll give you an example. So my business, K3D, I actually started it because It was a catering marketplace. I forgot to tell you what it was. So what I would do is get small local food businesses into big corporates in order to do that catering, and facilitated the process through my ridiculously complicated system in the middle by which, you know, everyone used with phone calls. But the reason I did it is because I really, really cared about those small local food businesses. And I really wanted them to stay in business because I was a big foodie. But you know who didn't care about that? My customers. They couldn't give a shit. That food needed to be there on time, every time, looking like the photo. So her boss, and it was a her most of the time, that EA, that secretary, either got loads of kudos because the food was so much better than any of the other sandwiches they normally got in, or that she didn't get in trouble because the food wasn't there. And so even though my personal why every single morning when I got out of bed was to make sure that I was doing right by my suppliers, my company was completely focused on the experience of the person that pushed that button to make that money. So you can continue as a founder to live by your values and make sure that you are not compromising in any way when it comes to how you feel about the work that you're doing. But keep in mind that it might not be the same. Hopefully it is, but you know, yes. So that's what I would say. I also think that, you know, even with circular economy, like there is a lot of goodwill. Yeah. So you can, if again, you want to be a commercially viable entity, then like hopefully, you know, trying things out to work with those people that are, you know, that are the most aligned with your values, the most aligned with what you're trying to do. And then the third thing is if you can bake it into your model. So like I would only use food businesses that I felt, you know, really needed a leg up, I guess, but their food had to be good. And so you can do the same, you know, especially, you know, on the ground while your company's growing, you know, like who do you think that who do you believe can help you, you know, achieve your vision by using them as suppliers or, you know, by negotiating contracts that you think are fair for everyone. Like at the end of the day, it's going to be a negotiation and it is a financial negotiation, but it doesn't have to be cutthroat. It doesn't have to be like, you know, I'm trying to get everything. And if you're trying to work with someone who is, it's probably not the right fit for you at this time, because you might not have any leverage. Grow a little bit, and then you can go back to them and be like, here's my contract. And then watch them like a hawk. Hope that helps.
It certainly does. I've got an interesting one here from Alison around this. Another idea for getting your business up to scale is, have you ever encountered almost a sponsorship agreement where an early customer commits to a volume that allows you to commence the business, and then they can get preferential treatment over the long term or claw back capital or that sort of thing? Have you seen any of those sorts of arrangements?
So yes, but it's not a sponsorship.
No.
And I want to be really clear, because this is actually, language is very important. Yeah, you are not a non-for-profit. There is no such thing as sponsorship in business. What it is a channel partner.
Yep.
So that's a path to market for you. So, you know, maybe it's a negotiation, maybe it is, you know, like some kind of partnership. You want to be really clear that this is not them offering you charity out of the goodness of their heart. This is a partnership by which a company might, you know, want to improve their ESG rating or really just like your product. You know, maybe it's a business that, you know, they are also they might be for profit, but purpose driven. So, you know, there could potentially be opportunities there. It just has to be a really compelling proposition and hopefully, you know, mutually beneficial. Like figure out what they're getting out of it, because it might not be financial. It might actually be something like, you know, we are a B Corp, for example. So, you know, going to them and, you know, if there is a significant capital outlay or, you know, they can try to claw back capital, what would be the value for them? Because obviously, like the value for you would be quite substantial, but what would be the value for them and what can you offer them? Yeah.
A lot of what you talk about relates to really understanding your customers and their supply chains and things like that. Can you give any suggestions about how people can validate and not just get warm fuzzies back from potential customers, because everyone wants to buy your idea, and as you talk about, but if you don't put a price on it and you can't quantify the value, how can people find that out and really understand their customers?
Yeah, that's such a good question. I would, depending on what your model is, if you're selling to consumers, maybe it's easier, but if you are, some kind of enterprise in sort of existing supply chains, figure out who the decision maker is ultimately. Mm-hmm. Who is the person signing the check? Is it the CFO? Is it HR? In my case, it was actually the EAs themselves. They could just go on my platform and click a button and buy the food. So she's who I cared about. So if you find out who the decision maker is, ultimately, there's going to be, in my assumption, is that you might have made a contact in a company, but they don't make the final decision. So if you could go to the decision makers, not in a commercial way, especially if you're just starting out, but asking questions about the entire landscape and way that they do what it is that they do. Like, for example, if you are a, recycling company, let's just say, I would want you to know everything about that system internally. So, are you like, who's the recycling company? Like, is it a procurement process? You might have to deal with procurement. Like, the farther up that you can go in terms of asking questions, what you will find is that a lot of people, decision makers, and particularly procurement in particular, if you go to them asking about their problems, or like, what's like a daily challenge for them, what's the thing that like bothers them the most about their job, they will absolutely give you time. They will tell you they will give you 5 minutes. You will probably be there for an hour just listening. So if you can find the decision maker and understanding, not only the model in which this, idea like has to fit into, but also like the problems of the people who are like the ultimate decision makers, you will be able to craft your narrative and hopefully your product in such a way that it is easy for them to say yes, preferably cheaper. But if it isn't, and sometimes it's not, because you have to make money, especially early on before you get to scale, figure out like where that value lies for that decision maker in particular, provided that it's not going to go like, it doesn't hurt you inside to be compromising your integrity on doing that, because maybe you have to find a different way.
Yeah. I'm going to pivot back to funding, because making yourself available to the people in this session is fantastic. But how else can people find out about different grants or partnership opportunities or ways of working with existing supports that are out there? Is there a directory? Is there a go-to? Other than, obviously, Boomerang Labs knows everything, but other than that.
Yes. Okay. So the maddeningly unfortunate answer is that there is one place. I will put that in the chat quickly. Right. It is called gemaker.com. Or I think maybe .com.au. Have a look at it. I'm not sure. It's run by a wonderful woman who actually kind of does it as a service to the community. As far as we know, us working in the grant space, there is no directory. There is no central place. The federal government does not have one. And because of the way that, I don't know, offense, I've been here 11 years. I still don't know how many states there are. I think there's 7 states or something in Australia. There is no... Six. Okay. 6. So of the 6 states who I believe could probably easily coordinate within each other, at a federal level or whatever else, because there's only 6 of them, come together and actually come up with some kind of cohesive strategy to support, the ecosystem as a whole. There is nothing out there aside from GE Maker that I'm aware of. Yeah. So, which sucks.
It does, doesn't it?
Really sucks. So what I would say is, first I'll start at the state level. I talked about local councils before. So, trying to find if there's any, smaller opportunities for you. At the state level, I think that's where a lot of the value is, or there's where a lot of the opportunities are. Because different states are going to have different priorities, right? So they're going to say, okay, right now our priority is, a lot of it's around renewable energy. And so like a lot of it is like environmentally focused. So maybe in your states, looking at the Department of, Environment or Planning or something like that, there might be some opportunities there. The unfortunate reality is that for whatever reason, we are finding that there are less grant opportunities than ever with the change in government that's just happened, at a federal level, at least. The model is to look at everything that's happening and to put their own stamp on it, essentially. So the Accelerating Commercialization Grant, which, I am a former alumni of, I guess, that's a prime example. So that program was going for, I think 12 years, maybe even 14 years, arguably the most successful grant program that has, existed in Australia, especially for early stage startups. And for reasons unknown, this program has been discontinued and is going to be replaced with something where the model is quite similar, but the focus on the startups that are going to be funded are going to be focused on alignment with the National Reconstruction Fund priority objectives, which isn't circular economy. Renewable energy, yes, but not circular economy. However, the last priority area for the National Reconstruction Fund, in terms of the industry growth program, which we are hoping will open for applications on the 1st of October. Whether or not that happens, I'm not sure. It could potentially be like, Q1 of the new calendar year. The last priority area is enabling capabilities, of which there is no current definition, which is wonderfully vague. And I can't think of a better way to enable capability than with circular economy startups, taking existing products or, new models with existing supply chains in order to, grow Australia's economy, which absolutely has to be the narrative. Because if you look at the growth program, it was the same with AC. So I would have a lot of companies coming to me saying like, this is absolutely world-class technology. It's going to change the world. The government should be funding this because it's going to reduce emissions and, reduce carbon, the carbon footprint. And I would say to them, I don't really care. That's not my job. For this grant in particular, that was not the job. It was around economic prosperity to Australia. So my role was to, if I believed that there was a viable economic business case, to help them put that together so that they could achieve that vision. That is the unfortunate reality.
Yeah. And I think there is something in that around different lenses that are brought to things. The government is particularly interested in economic growth, and consumers are much, much more interested in sustainability. Venture capitalists want to see returns. You can actually look at the same thing with a number of different hats on. And I think it's very important that to appreciate what AusIndustry's piece of that is, and that does not represent all of you as a human being, but in its capacity, that's the lens you need to deal with AusIndustry through.
Yes.
Yeah. Yes. We've got some questions here about the fact that yes, you need to work in with from Joseph here with existing supply chains, but inherent in the idea of promoting a more circular economy, you also have to find ways of reimagining some of those supply chains to make them circular. Does that make the job harder? Is there a narrative to that in itself?
Yes, it absolutely makes the job harder. There are infinite ways in which you have to apply, either design thinking or creativity and ingenuity in order to figure out what kind of narrative is going to be the most impactful to integrate into these supply chains. Like, it is the unfortunate reality, I think, depending on the model when it comes to the circular economy. So if you are, so let's just say, for example, I give it's not circular economy, but I'm a foodie dietitian. So I give the example of precision fermentation for food, which is synthetic biology. So essentially like growing meat in labs. Yeah. Or milk, something like that. Now, it's really exciting because we can build these big labs and hopefully in 10 years time, be able to feed the world in labs. But the impact that it will have on existing industries, like the Meat and Livestock Association, like dairy, even on, smaller farmers that rely on these existing supply chains in order to make their living, there has to be it's kind of like when things change, like other people could potentially be missing out. Yeah. So you can understand how there would be a lot of resistance. And if those, huge, and this is like an extreme example probably, but if these huge existing, systems that have literally fed us for millennia are now being disrupted, hopefully at the government level, there would be care taken to ensure that that's, there's a soft landing, that there's an easy transition, that these people aren't just kind of like left completely like high and dry. It's kind of the same within these smaller companies, with existing supply chains, which are hugely inefficient. Because like, if there's any technical people here, like consider that it's like the equivalent of technical debt. So you've like built on top of, built on top of, built on top of, built on top of, all of these things, over 30 years. And now all of a sudden someone's coming in and being like, we're going to redesign the entire thing. I'm reading you're serving if you are serving like a smaller addressable market than traditional supply chains, who cares? Why is that a problem? Like if you're serving a customer, then, that's kind of, it's the I wouldn't say unfortunate reality. It's a real opportunity. You can like get people on your side. And I think you have a benefit in that it is coming.
Yeah.
Like it's absolutely coming. So hopefully you are dealing with organizations that are forward thinking.
I think that's a really big part, I think, of finding the right opportunities is that many larger companies are starting to mandate goals that will force them to review how their supply chain works.
Yes.
And therefore, the procurement manager, for example, who may be very happy with how it all works right now, has been told to pull out 20% of waste from the supply chain. And the second they do that, they've got to start talking to their suppliers and determining whether they can or can't meet that. And that can often be an internally generated opportunity for disruption, and identifying those opportunities can be a really good way to go for early stage companies in our experience.
Yeah, those are great customers to get on side. Anyone that has to do anything are the people you want to talk to.
Yeah. I think it's often forgotten that the people on the customer side are people who want to go home to their families and pursue their golf or, Pilates or whatever it is. And you're often creating additional work. That means that they get home an hour later and things like that. So anything that actually drives the change, I think is worth embracing when it's on the customer side and zeroing in on it.
Yeah, that's when I talk about integrating with existing supply chains, that's exactly what I'm talking about. No one wants to do extra work. I see a lot of edutech companies, a lot of moms that are starting, edutech companies and apps for their kids to use in schools or for teachers. And I'm like, you are dreaming if you think that those teachers are going to use another app. Because they have so much to do. And it's very similar with existing supply chains. The difference is that it is coming slowly but surely, and timing is really important in business. So if you can time it so that, you understand, you can find those organizations that, are mandating this internally or who are going towards this, and actually really be an advocate, and almost, if you can, help do the work for them, provided there is a, reciprocal benefit from a financial perspective. They will also be loyal customers to you.
Yeah. Maria has raised the really good example of Humanitics, which has got a good, but it essentially plays on people's goodwill to fund a business model. Do you think there's opportunities there? Or you spoke about crowdfunding and things like that.
Okay, so what I would say about Humanitics, because I actually know the founder, Jonathan Ross, reasonably well. He spends 90% of his time on that product and making it better than Eventbrite. That is his actual job. Again, a founder, which is an excellent example of why he gets out of bed every morning, is to help, Indigenous girls, have opportunities for, to improve their reading skills. But his time and his business, like Humanitics, is not just so warm and fuzzy. We use Humanitics because the product works. It's better than Eventbrite. It's easier to use. He's spending his time, working on, internally on the product to make sure that, it's capturing all the data that event organizers want to. He has baked into his model the impact that he wants to have, but innately, his job is creating the best competitor possible to the existing incumbent, and they've done a phenomenal job of doing that.
Yeah, I think that is a very good one. Do you see many examples of not-for-profit businesses teaming up with for-profit businesses and having a blended business model, kind of like a cafe and an art gallery, a shop where you can kind of put two things together?
No.
But
it's not because it doesn't exist. It's because we live in like VC land where like that's just not what we do. But I should know. I would love to know more about that. Like I would love to know more about actual just small businesses doing, real things in the world, not just like made up billion-dollar valuations sometimes. So like, actually, I don't know, but I would love to see more of that. And I think if that could be something that I could learn more about, because I am sure that it exists, but at like little micro levels all around. But I would love to see more of that.
Well, in an interesting way, without going too much of a tangent, but Boomerang Labs is a not-for-profit, and Impact Ventures, the VC arm, is certainly for-profit, because we want to let our investors know that our interests are aligned, but one can't live without the other. And I think there are examples out there of different ways of approaching commerciality to scale and remain on purpose.
I'm thinking there is one example. I'm working with a company called Compassion Creamery. So they are the world's first oat-based cream cheese. They're really delicious. I would highly recommend. Good example of a founder who's really, really, really passionate about animal rights and is a vegan, but is actually, very focused on like making the product good. And she hires disadvantaged youth through a government program, which, matches companies with like apprenticeships from kids from like disadvantaged backgrounds. So I think that's an example, but
very interesting. We've got a question here again from Joseph around trends in this circular economy. A lot of the customers don't really understand, investors don't really understand the broader landscape. Does the government or any organizations that you've come across publish data around the trends and new developments?
I don't know.
Me either.
I would think potentially maybe like think tanks, or it could be like, there's so many social impact organizations. Again, I think part of the challenge is like the disparate organizations. There are probably hundreds of organizations that exist either like, nationally or, like in your state. But like, there's not a lot of integration. So maybe the Social Impact Hub, I know they're based out of Sydney, and they are like, I think they're an umbrella organization of like, I don't know, 8 different, they do like 8 different things. They might have something, but I don't know of any, unfortunately.
No,
if anyone does, feel free to post it in the chat. I'm always happy to learn something new.
And if there could be a commercial opportunity there, because there is a lot of people who want access to that sort of data.
Absolutely.
Just hanging around in the ecosystem can present opportunities. In terms of investment, we all hear about venture capitalists, but I find that there can be a lot of frustration in that sector because they're much more tech focused, and not real life.
Yeah.
Does everyone have to be a startup in the most Silicon Valley sense, or is there an opportunity to build more traditional businesses bootstrapped and getting straight to revenue as quickly as you can?
Yes, please do that. VCs don't need any more money. No offense, peers.
No.
But like,
I'm a
honestly,
VC by necessity, not desire.
but it's true, so like one of the things I'm really passionate about and, would love to explore more now that I've got a bit of time on my hands is, the democratization of capital. Like, none of you need to raise VC money. And in fact, not only might not be appropriate for you, but talk about maybe having to compromise your values. Yeah, because their model is different than yours. No matter what they tell you, they will say, yeah, we're an impact fund, peers excluded, obviously. But they will tell you, like, they're an impact fund. They really care about, female founders, even though like 0.3% of funding went to females in the last, 10 years in Australia. So yes, there's absolutely an opportunity, like, grow your business sustainably. You don't have to be a VC fund. I think that, or, VC backable. Like, if you want to grow a sustainable small business, do that. Please do that. I wish I had done that because I might even be in business today if I had done that. But it led me down a different path, which has ultimately been, more satisfying and exciting. But yeah, there's absolutely scope to do that. In terms of funding, that's when I was talking about, like, crowdfunding, for example. Like, you don't owe anybody anything. If you have, friends and family that are interested in what you're doing, then, it depends on the capital outlay you need. You probably don't need as much as you think. It might be a landing page and then an Excel spreadsheet. You don't have to overbake it. Yeah.
Most certainly. I think we're just about out of time, but there's been this theme through the chat about really defining circular economy, that there's people who are using it around software systems that themselves are not necessarily circular in nature. Do you have a view to close off the session with where circular economy begins and ends?
Ooh, I mean, it's
a tricky one.
But I think, I would, look at these startups. Like, you obviously started because you identified an opportunity in something that's existing and realized that you could do it better. So I think with circular economy, it, like, the core, in my opinion, and by the way, I didn't even Google, like I started up the Zoom and I was like, shit, I don't even really have a definition for circular economy, really. I just but in my, I have a personal one, I guess. And it would really be, taking something existing in the ecosystem and ensuring that longevity of that. So not creating anything new. You're literally taking what exists already, and you can create something new out of that, which is kind of what you're doing, is what I would say. Taking existing systems, existing models, existing products, and creating new ways. Business model innovation, supply chain innovation, product innovation. That to me is the definition of a circular economy startup, hopefully for the benefit of not only like, the macro, but also like, micro, like your own little community. It's a great place to start.
Yeah. Oh, well, thank you so much, Elizabeth. Filled with information and perspectives. If people want to get in touch with you or AusIndustry, how can they reach out?
Sure. So I will say I am no longer affiliated with AusIndustry.
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought you still were.
No, that's fine. With the new program starting, so because it's a new program at the moment, actually, this is good. Let me just bear with me 1 second while I get the link up. So I'll talk about AusIndustry first. So the industry growth program is currently holding consultation. I may or may not be speaking quite closely to the director of policy for the new program, who happens to be a phenomenal woman who really wants to do right by startups. So there is currently a consultation going out for the public where you can actually fill in a survey and give your say about, the design of the new program and what that might look like. I have mentioned at length, and this is kind of an outlier, I would say, not to forget about just smaller startups that might need a leg up, like 50 grand, 100 grand. Maybe all you need to do is buy a piece of machinery and you don't really need any more than that. I have made that known at length to anyone who will listen to me. Whether or not it happens, I'm not sure. So I can't find the thing. I will send it to Kaelin after, and you can send it around to everyone, but I will send the link for the consultation so that if you want to have your voice heard, that's kind of the best way, and it's really good timing. With the new program, I may be involved, not quite sure yet. Depends on what it looks like, how I can potentially offer value. So that's what I would say, but the consultation. If you'd like to get in touch with me, the best way is LinkedIn. And please just, if you do, and I encourage all of you to get in touch with me, because I would love to, keep in touch with all of you. If you could just drop me a message and say how, I listened to your talk on Boomerang Labs, and then I will accept your invitation and we can go from there.
Fabulous. Thank you so much for your time and for everyone for joining the event. I'll hand back to Katie to close off and tell you about the next event and where to register.
Thank you so much, everyone. I really appreciate being here.
Thank you.